Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Formula G show. We are in the Czech Republic this week for week 6 of our competition. My name is Zotomo and I'm joined by Calamity. How are you doing?
Hello. Tired, but otherwise okay. How are you?
Yeah, tired as well. We both had pretty busy weeks, a little bit of overwork and overtime being put in. But we're here anyways with this show. Can't wait to talk about how the Czech Republic went. A very competitive matchup this time, Calamity.
Yeah, Czechia is generally relatively easy, meaning that if you've got 5 minutes of time, you're not going to be allowed to drop a lot of points just if you still want to get points. Points in both scenarios, yep. You're not going to be allowed to drop a lot of Geoguessr points if you still want to get Formula G points, to make it a bit more clear. And Prague is similarly very easy, and as such, we did have relatively short time limits, but even then, expecting a lot of 25Ks there as well.
Okay, well, let's take a look first at these feature race locations. And round 1 is kind of hidden by round 5 there, but we are in kind of the northeastern part of the country, just off of the 11, and we actually spawned right near a state border and in the middle of snow.
Yep, right next to a regional border. Most of those are named after, well, the biggest city in the region, so relatively easy to find as long as you went east and then south. If you went the other way, probably still made it to a relatively major road relatively quickly. So not a lot of people struggling with this one. In any case, if at all, just pinpointing errors here.
Okay, round 2 saw us head to the southeast corner of the country on the 495, again on a state border, I believe, and we were kind of just off of major roads, the 54 and the 55.
Yeah, another regional border, this time between Zlin and South Moravia. Yeah, the one annoying part was the border not really being at the same point on the map as the border signs would indicate on the road. But other than that, I think for most people, you didn't really have to travel that far. You saw the border signs, you saw either you went west and found the city there, or you went east and found the city there. And that is generally enough information to find where you are. And then it was just, the fact that the border was, well, either the border or the border signs were misplaced that led to a lot of people dropping a few points.
Yeah, so where the actual sign was different than where the kind of dotted line was on the Google map. So if you guessed accurately compared to the sign, you missed a few points, but if you paid attention to the road shape, you actually were able to pinpoint that a little bit more accurately for that one. Round 3 saw us head a bit ways east of Prague in a very small little area, but again, surrounded by a couple major roads you could definitely get to in time, the 38 and the 2. And we did have a point of interest on this one that helped pinpoint in Calamity.
Yeah, a couple points of interest. Also, just the shape of the buildings on the map and a train track as well. That massively helps out there. Yeah, generally quite far in the middle of nowhere there, but pretty much either way you went, you would have eventually ended up with some good signs. It just usually took a bit more time than some of the other rounds.
Very good. Round 4 continued the streak of having really good signs very close to the location. We started just south of the 1 in the southeast corner. Again, not too far from round 2. And yeah, as you headed north, you got to see an overpass with a major highway, and you could read some of the signs. You couldn't get on the highway, though, Calamity.
Yeah, at least I couldn't, and some other people couldn't. I don't know if it was possible. I don't think I was actually able to read what these signs said, and well, even if I did, I probably ignored it. Don't ask me why. But eventually I found other signs as well, which were partially helpful. Kind of annoying that they gave me a road number that doesn't exist, or at least is not on the map. Maybe the road is called that, but Google Maps just thought, who needs to know that? And yeah, I eventually ended up with the right place anyway, as did most people. But again, a round that could have upset a few people.
Yeah, near the starting location was also a church and a curve in the road, so those were very nice for pinpointing in that round. And then round 5 saw us practically within spitting distance of round number 1, just further down the 11 in the same corner. I think with 5 minutes, if you would have beelined it, you might have been able to reach the same location. A bit of a stretch, but definitely a nice afternoon drive connecting the two. And again, Calamity, a very nice train track running near the starting location.
Yeah, train track definitely helps pinpointing, especially because, as you said, it runs right alongside the road for a long time, which is a pretty distinct feature. Um, I guess you could have also, we've already recorded the cast, so where you did point out that round 1s and round 5 looked quite similar, logically being very close to each other, but I never left the snow region in round 1, so I never noticed that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that alone, if you went a specific way in round 1 and saw some information that you might have seen in round 5 again, then that would have helped out for sure. But I think generally just the way that the train and the road went, if you walked far enough and found your way to road 11, you would have been able to do this round without any real problems.
Yeah, I hit the 11 for both 1 and 5, and they both had signs for one or two towns that were the same. So I was like, well, we're in this area. And then it was pretty easy to find the little village name after that from there and get close. But of course, I can't pinpoint, so I'm still down a bit. just a little bit too far away from each one of these locations to get an ace. But yeah. Okay, well, let's look at how everybody else did. And we're going to see how fast you dropped without getting when you didn't get a 25K. You had to be in the top 8 to get without a 25K. You were already in 9th, which was you, Calamity, dropping 3 points total, unfortunately, in 9th. Max and Simi were very close as well, getting those 24.99 somethings, but still just out of the points for Simi, unfortunately. Boxa, Orpheus, and Jack ES all taking the top podium places. Boxa, again, kind of staking his claim to that podium. You might as well write his name on it. He's going to be there almost every week. Orpheus and Jack, though, jumping back up. Nice to see them. At the other end, unfortunately, rough weeks for Closed, and Danny Blondes is still not without internet, and so they were unable to play. Slovak Goalie is kind of absent for the last few weeks. And some pretty good scores even down the lower half of the table, but again, dropping even a few hundred points was enough to drop you out of the points in this one. Any other surprises here?
Yeah, you gotta be surprised by Simi on his own map in his home country not getting any points. But yeah, unfortunately, just dropped 6 points. Let me just quickly check if those were in one round. No, actually split up to 3 points each in the first 2 rounds. So no points for him. Other than that, you kind of got the favorites sort of in the top 10 here, with the only exception of Shumi, who got his first points of the season by getting a 5th place in Czechia. And other than that, yeah, it kind of looking like what you'd expected, with maybe the odd person a bit higher up or a bit lower down, but that's probably the most typical top 10 we've had so far.
Yeah, very nice for them. Also, it's nice to see Tal and Paula back. He did miss last week, so yeah, getting a few points in his return after a bit of an absence. So very nice. Well, moving on to our sprint race locations in Prague. Again, Calamity, as you mentioned, a very well labeled city. This is the order you had for us here. Yeah, Prague, just like Paris, if you don't know, has district numbers, and they're on almost all the street signs. That immediately tells you where to start looking. So round 1 saw us near the train station, the main train station in Prague, but unfortunately we couldn't actually see it. Near a park and some hotels instead.
Yeah, I have to admit, it's been like 2 weeks since I've played that, and therefore I don't quite remember what I saw in each of the rounds. The only thing I do remember is that I didn't really travel far for any of them. And I did most of it with street names and district numbers. Pretty much on every street sign you find, you'll also get the district that you're in. The only annoying district being District 2, because I, to this day, still don't know where exactly that is because it doesn't show up on the map. But either way, most of the locations, as you can see there on the map anyway, were in District 1. So pretty much all you had to do was go and find a street that looks like it's big enough for you to find on the map, and then look for it on the map. anything like, for example, in this round, the park to the northeast surely helped out as well. If you paid attention to that, I don't think I did. But yeah, in any case, relatively easy round for sure for round one as well. Very distinct name as well to the south, Washington Nova. That's a name you can remember while looking for it on the map.
Yeah, very nice. And big roads that are pretty easy to read even at a high zoom level, which is really nice when you're playing Prague. Round two saw us head very close to the river. I actually got to see the river from this location. Again, in the same district number 1, pretty much the old town. And we were right near a synagogue as a point of interest for that.
Yeah, you would have got to see the river if you traveled, any sort of distance. I didn't personally. I think I went north, if I remember correctly, to the first intersection we saw, and then I looked for it on the map because it did look like we were in the central part of Prague. Just by the way, the road is paved, and road names weren't too difficult to find. I actually didn't realize, I wasn't 100% sure it was a synagogue, or at least the same synagogue that we had on the map. But yeah, after a bit of double checking, it became relatively clear and was not that difficult to pinpoint.
Yeah, actually, I kind of found the road further south of the location. And as I was kind of moving up, trying to find cross streets, I saw a synagogue. I was like, "Oh, synagogue!" And because we're playing with like what I think I had 2 minutes or something to do this one, and so I'm moving very fast. I'm like, "Oh, synagogue!" Click, and it was the right one. And then as the map kind of zoomed out a little bit, I'm like, "Oh, there's a synagogue there and a synagogue there."
Yeah, there's a lot
synagogue
of them.
there, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm so lucky that was the right one because." Just a little bit more north was like 3 more, and I could have easily picked one of those and then have been so screwed. But it paid off in the end. Round 3 saw us head to the southern part of town and the castle in Prague.
Yep, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of this.
In practice, but no.
Yeah, relatively. I'm actually going to say that was probably the hardest to find if you didn't make your way out of the area. If you just kept wandering around the castle, I doubt you had any easily available signs. But if you went south, you relatively quickly got to a restaurant that had both the name of the castle and also, I think, the district on it. So more than enough information for that, and the starting location was also relatively easy to pinpoint near a round tower.
Yeah, I mean, and also like I kind of like looked at the location and was like, you know what? There's one big castle in Prague. This is probably the grounds of this. I did move far enough to find some names and signs and then confirm that, but it's a pretty noticeable landmark. So if you had kind of practiced or even just kind of zoomed around a Prague in Google Maps just to get a lay of the land, you would have probably been able to pick it up pretty quickly from that as well. Round 4 saw us just on the kind of southwest corner of the Narodny Museum. I'm not sure what kind of museum it is, but we're right near it anyways.
It says here, venerable place with historical exhibits. Okay. Whatever that means.
Historical museum.
Yep.
Yeah.
On one of the major roads going through Prague. I'm not even entirely sure because the name doesn't ring a bell anymore, I think. But what exactly I found, probably did find that name specifically though. And yeah, as you said, right, very close to that massive museum, which I don't think I even went to. I don't think I traveled that far. Yeah, just it looked like a major road. You look at the names of the road. There you go.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was, I saw a sign for that museum in my round that I had in my round 1 location for you, right? So I saw a sign pointing to that, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's this big museum. It's a landmark. And then in this round, it was right there, and I was like, okay, well, I know the general area to start looking. And then I found it very easily, and then was able to pinpoint. Yeah, so it was like, oh, what do you know? I remember this.
Yeah, it also helps that the main road here pretty much changes names at exactly this point. So if you walked
Yeah,
north,
yeah.
if you walked south, the main road had a different name. So you didn't even necessarily need any side roads to pinpoint because, it's just there.
Hmm. Very nice location indeed. And then our last round for you, Calamity, we headed way kind of northwest out of the city in District 6. So
Mm.
not really kind of Prague, at least what most tourists know of. But still very easy location, not too far from another major road. Is it called just like Euro Road? Europa Ska? Something like that, right? It looks
I'm
like Europa, but I mean, I'm
I'm
not
not
sure.
entirely sure what you're talking about.
Oh, like the major road north of the location.
Oh,
Like, is it Evro? Is it Evro or Euro? I'm
uh,
not sure, but
I think you pronounce the V. I mean, at least I know it in Slovenian. I'm assuming it's kind of similar in Czech. You pronounce it kind of like a U, not
yeah,
quite,
that's what I was
but
thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
Europska is
So,
what I would have said.
mhm.
It's kind of
So
like a
again, a major
mixture
road
between
to
a V
use.
and a U. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, so that wasn't too tricky there. But anything else from that final location?
It was the one that took me the longest with a minute and 23. But
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
it was just you kind of made your way east and then north or west and then north. It doesn't really matter. You probably hit that road either way. And then you quickly see, okay, District 6 isn't exactly that big. So you just kind of look for which way you came from. Because you did start on some relatively small roads.
Yeah, yeah. The starting location road was probably the trickiest, but again, it was surrounded by lots of good
Yeah.
information, which definitely made it findable for that. Okay, well, let's see how everybody did in the sprint results for this week. Max, Jack, and you, Calamity, take the podium spots, only literally 2 meters separating all three of you. Mr. Blue just outside of that with 18 meters and a perfect score. But again, top 7 perfect scores. But then it takes quite a drop after that. All the way down and into the 23, 22s, 21s very quickly in that top 10. I just miss out by a couple hundred points to Tom Paula on some points in the sprint race here. Towards the other end, quite a few DNSs, even more than the feature race. Just players just not getting to it, I guess, including Boxa, who won the feature race, which was quite a turnaround for him. And the basement also falling way down towards the bottom there, and Shumi towards the top in the feature race at the opposite end of it in this one.
Yeah, it's not too much of a surprise that the points drop off relatively quickly here. Prague is a very small city. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, unless you get a perfect score, you're going to lose a lot of points. For example, what I've got up right now here is Steal the Snick in round 3 was 297 meters away, which is not that far. It's pretty much in
No,
the right
no.
region, but he lost 2,200 points for that. So unless you pretty much knew exactly where you were, at which point you probably would have gotten a perfect score anyway, you're going to drop a lot
Mm-hmm.
of points. Um,
Yeah, I think as an example, I think I was a block away in one of them, and I got 3,600 points. So I was literally like one road up, and you lose that many points right there.
mm,
So very, very harsh in terms of points.
yeah,
So, well, very nice, and congrats to you, Calamity, on a podium
thanks.
finish in the sprint race. For that. Okay, well, let's see what this means for our driver standings after 6 weeks have gone. Boxa, Mr. Blue, and Orpheus all keeping their top spots there. Mr. Blue with some pretty decent points up there helps him keep that second spot. Boxer really running away with the title, though, so far. Moist Flubber and Max FI round on that top 5. Calamity, you're sitting down in 7th. Not a bad result at all for you so far in the season. Towards the other end of things, Slovak goalie yet to pick up a point, but Danny and Wickholm and me and Shumit also towards the bottom. We have a few points, but a little bit of a gap with Close in 18th, and then quite another gap kind of appears a little bit up towards maybe one Wakelock area in 13th, kind of dividing up the field.
Yeah, it was a very good week for Jack with a third and a second place in the 2 races, catapulting him up the table quite a bit. For myself as well, pretty good week. Even though I only came 9th in the feature race, but a third place in the sprint race was pretty nice, especially with the shortest time limit as well. Yeah, Boxer, even though he missed the sprint race, doesn't really matter too much. Yeah, and then it's relatively close again from like second down to seventh, maybe, maybe even eighth. It's not too much of a distance between those places. Everything's still possible here. Yeah, at the back, Shumi with his first points of the season. Quite nice for him. Yeah, not too many changes otherwise, I think.
Yeah, pretty much settled. Not the season to remember for Close, our champion from last season. Only 20 points after 6 weeks for him there. Okay, let's take a look at the Constructor Challenge finally. Up next, we have Nordhagen, of course, way up in the lead. Chariot's got a nice boost with its nice drivers, as well as Scantrum. I think those are pretty much the same. FGT, your team, Calamity, sitting there again in fourth. Katsuvasa, Bamberg right at the top 5. At the other end, Opava and Octane kind of close there towards the bottom, and then a bit of a gap between Orient and the rest, but a pretty close field between like around Bamberg and Orient. Those could easily switch up in a single week, Calamity.
Yeah, I actually think it's quite interesting because we are in in a seasonal competition to look at how these teams did last season as well compared to this season, because we are getting to a point where we're closing in on the end of it. And one interesting thing, Opava still came last season. Didn't really change much this season. Oberhausen, though, as our winners of last season, dropped off quite a lot, close to maintaining his position in the team, but not having a good season this time around. And Simi, who was close partner last season, also not having a very good season. So yeah, maybe you just can't do well in Formula G because it'll curse you for next season. Who knows? But yeah, Nordhagen pretty much almost done at this point. 116 points ahead. It'll be very difficult to make up. But behind that, definitely still a lot that can happen. Chariot and Scansum, especially, very close together.
Yeah, Chariot really getting a boost this season with the addition of Moist Flubber to their roster, really boosting them up. Scantrum was also kind of always up there, but you, Calamity, with your new teammate in it's Einarglu, right?
Yep.
So Division 1 player, so that also boosting your performance up in the table to give you guys a good chance. And pretty much the rest of the field is a mixture of one decent driver who's getting probably 70-80% of the points, and then a second driver who's trickling in the points behind them after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really takes two pretty solid drivers, or at least one really good driver for this one. But I mean, Nordhagen, Boxa, and Max both in the top 5, equally contributing points. And Chariot with Moist is the 4th, Berryfishy Bear is an 8th. So again, 2 top 10s is kind of what it takes to get you in those top spots.
Yeah, and another fun fact: Nordhagen, Chariot, and FGT all have already gotten more points than in the whole of last season.
Yeah, I was not the best teammate in Chariot last season towards the end, as I came in as a reserve driver, but I did my best nonetheless. But yeah, congrats to them and really improving with their new lineups this season. I think your team's doing pretty good. You have more points than you got.
Yeah, I am in FGT. That was one of the three teams I named earlier. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I totally spaced on that one. Okay, well, that was our standings after 6 weeks. We're heading into a couple very interesting maps coming up. We've got Norway, South Africa, and I think we have Sweden. We've got 2 Scandinavian
Got the UAE
countries, right?
and Finland. Yep.
Finland, that's the other one. Finland is the other one. So we got 2 Scandinavian countries as well as a Middle Eastern country and Africa. South Africa, that would be a really interesting map for that. But yeah, we'll see you all in those weeks, and we'll see who can take home the championship this season. Take care.
Well, you might want to talk about Norway first, but
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Norway. Let's actually talk about Norway. Here we go. Norway, average score 16,853. Been played almost 3,000 times. 150,000 locations. Over 150,000 locations. 67 likes. A pretty decent map. I think it's pretty much just a what's the word I'm looking for? Polygon map. Yeah, polygonal map of the country. And Oslo as our sprint race city. Calamity, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I quite like Norway in general. It can have some locations where you're just literally driving for 5 minutes and not find anything at all. But if you do find stuff, it's usually quite helpful, and I quite enjoy playing it. Quite opposite to Oslo, which I don't enjoy playing. I don't really know why. I just never really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at like the city, there were some very like distinct nice areas you can kind of pick out if you land in them. They have good landmarks and whatnot. There's a nice park in kind of the northwest part of the city, but a lot of this kind of suburbs or outside of what you might consider the old town was like you can't tell the difference. It's just Northern European architecture for block after block after block. Good luck finding these small, tiny little streets on a map. There's no big main roads going through the town, and yeah, just not a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, there's just, I think my main problem with it is, as you said, there's just generally nothing really that tells you which part of town you're in. So if you don't find any, like, anything significant, any big building or stuff like that, then you kind of have no idea.
Yeah, and in terms of Norway, like Norway is, like you said, you can get stuck in the middle of nowhere, but Norway in general, very well signed. The tricky thing for me, though, is that it is a very long country, right? So even if the area isn't very large, it's stretched out. So if you don't have any clue and you pick the north and it's in the south, then you're kind of screwed.
Yep.
Because you're going to lose a lot of points for that. But the north and south are kind of different.
Yeah.
Not as much as some people might like, but there is some geological differences.
I mean, if you talk about the far north looks very different from like just, somewhere in the middle of Norway. If you talk about like somewhere around Oslo to somewhere like Trondheim, then you don't have much difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you really go extremes, then they're very, very different. But yeah, as we've seen previously for Formula G so far, I don't think there's any need to talk about, placing yourself on the wrong side of the country. If you're 100 meters away, you're probably not getting any points.
And that's what you got to worry about, yeah. And it's worth mentioning that we have, how many Scandinavians do we have? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Scandinavians, not to mention a couple of people who don't live too far away. We've got people who at least claim to be from Norway. We've got 4 of them. So this is going to be a really, really tight race. I could almost guess who might be in the top 5, just given who these people are and how well they hopefully know their home country and whatnot. So I think anybody will be lucky to get points if you're not from that Northern European region, just because of how tight it's going to be next week. And I think Oslo can be a lot more open if you don't live in Oslo or you haven't practiced the city too much, especially with short time limits. It's going to be more open of a race, but I think, the feature race is going to be very, very tight. Yeah. Okay, well, now, thank you all for watching. Hopefully, we'll see you all next week after Norway, and so we can take a look at how the drivers are shaping up after that one. And then we'll see you all then. Take care.
Bye.